This is an Office product you may have never seen before. Its name is InfoPath Designer, and it is part of Office, but was never included in every version of Office. It's a form creation tool and is the most popular form creation tool for SharePoint. If you're using SharePoint and want to create forms without needing to write code, without using something like Visual Studio, then you need to know about InfoPath. With InfoPath, we can create a form template, publish that form in SharePoint, and let users fill out forms that are created from that template, and store the results in SharePoint. Or, another thing that we can do with InfoPath Designer is we can modify the forms that are created automatically for our lists in SharePoint. That's another great use. Now, you can also use InfoPath to be able to create forms that you would complete, not using SharePoint, not in a browser, but using a tool called InfoPath Filler. But we don't see much of that anymore. And the reason is that InfoPath as a product is no longer being improved. There is no InfoPath 2016. This is InfoPath 2013, but this is the version that we'll use with SharePoint. We don't have enough time here to learn InfoPath. There is not one but two separate courses in the library on InfoPath. I'll tell you about those at the end of this movie. And those are, of course, fabulous courses because they're courses that I developed. But I do want to show you how InfoPath works broadly, because I find that many of the organizations that I consult with have SharePoint, have InfoPath, and don't know how to leverage the two to get some amazing results. This is the part of InfoPath called InfoPath Designer, and when you start it, you have choices of form templates. SharePoint List, SharePoint Form, those are the two that we'll focus on, even though there are many other choices here. And if I choose SharePoint Form, you'll see the form that you just saw. I have a basic layout table, and into that table I drop controls, text boxes, for example, rich text boxes, and so on. If I wanted, for example, to add a control here where someone could enter their name, I would just put a text box in right there. And I could add a label like first name. I could put a last name here. Really nice looking form. If I want to nail both of those, I can just select them both. Notice that it's lining up fields for me. And I can label this one, for example, title. Now that's one way to do it, and it's creating an XML schema for me on the right-hand side because I'm actually going to capture and store data in XML, which is pretty slick. I'll need to go back and rename these fields afterwards if I continue to do this in this way, because we don't want to have things called field 1, field 2, and so on. But there's another way that I can add fields to this as well, and that is to create a new field, add a field to the list, and call this field, for example, email. Choose a type. I have lots of different data types available. Text, rich text, whole numbers, decimals, Boolean, even the ability to attach a file. Really great possibilities. And if I wish, then I can drag and drop, and notice that I automatically get the title that is the name of the field. If I want, for example, to add another field for company name, that's going to be text. Notice what happens when I drag and drop this in right there, and I automatically get my label. So this gives me the ability to enter information, labels and such. And I can continue to build on this form, but notice how easy it is to create something that really looks pretty. If there are sections of the form that I don't wish to use, I can select and delete them. Oh, maybe one more thing. Let's have a date. There, we'll have a date. Just like that. I'm going to save my form wherever I wish. Just going to call this contact info. This is not the same as making it available in SharePoint though. So I'm going to slide over to SharePoint, and this is the site where I'd like to publish it in my San Francisco site. So I'm going to copy that URL, swing back to InfoPath, and publish this to a SharePoint library. For this browser-based form to work, SharePoint has to be running InfoPath form services, and there are some versions of SharePoint Online that do not. SharePoint Online Plan 2, these are the current names of these plans, does, as does any plan that is Enterprise Level 3 or better. That includes Office 365 Enterprise 3, that's what I run, and Enterprise 4. Office 365 Education A3 and A4, and Office 365 Government G3 and G4. If you have Small Business Server, you don't have InfoPath form services, so this particular use of InfoPath is not going to work for you. But assuming you have what you need, I can go to SharePoint Server, enter my URL, and it says enable this form to be filled out by using a browser. That was the point, and I'm going to create a new form library. It shows the libraries that are here already just in case I want to update the form that's in an existing library. And the name of my library is going to be Applications. I would enter a description. That's a good thing to do because this is another way to create an app in SharePoint. Click Next. It says, is there something that you would like to have in your default view or any other views you create in SharePoint? These columns are being promoted to SharePoint, which is the same as being sent to. So I would actually like to be able to see the first name and the last name and the company and the date submitted, perhaps. So I'm going to add first name, last name. Let's add company and date submitted. I can always, by the way, come back and republish this form and modify which fields are being sent to become columns in SharePoint. I'm all done. I'm going to click Publish. InfoPath is contacting SharePoint, creating a library with this form as its template. It says it was published successfully. If I wish, I can open the form library, which I will. I'm going to open the form in a browser real quickly so you can see what this form looks like that we created. Notice that I have the ability to tab to enter information in fields. I get a date picker because I had a date here. I can print this. I can save it, and so on. Here's my library. Name, modified by, company, first name, last name, date submitted. So some of these columns are standard columns in a form library. If I don't want them included in my view, I can simply remove them. I can come back to SharePoint and copy the URL, return to InfoPath, give it a new URL, and then I need to give the file a name. And the easiest thing to do if this is applications is choose someone's first name and last name. I could put application in part of its name if I wish, but I can then insert fields. Insert the first name, for example, and then the last name, or I have functions that I can use to create a file name. So if I say I want to concatenate first name, last name, and date submitted, for example. I'm going to verify that that's a decent formula, no errors, and say OK, and that will be the file name. And as long as we don't have two applications from people with the same name on the same date, we'll be fine. If that happens, it won't allow an overwrite. It won't let the second person save their file, so they might then need to put their middle initial in or something in the first name field. But this is where I would like my applications to come back to. So I've now set up my submit, and I need to now save this connection. And I need to republish my form. I can quick publish it to exactly the same place. It has a submit method built in, so we're going to quick publish this. And it says my form template was published successfully. Open this form in a browser. Let's do that, and let's fill it out. We know that we need to have a date for a file name, so it would be good to make first name, last name, and the date submitted required fields. We'll do that another time. Notice I have a button here that says submit to submit the form, and there we go. There is my InfoPath form that I created. Because I have columns here, I can actually do some analysis. We can create anything we want here. We can create travel expense forms and so on. One more use for InfoPath that I'd like to make sure we notice before we leave. If I go to any of my lists that I simply created as apps, for example, our links list, it's a fine list. And if I go to view my list here, and I would like to customize the form, notice how that will be customized. For customization, I use InfoPath. Whether I'm creating new forms and libraries or editing the forms that SharePoint creates for me, InfoPath is my tool. InfoPath was never available as a standalone product until September of 2015, and at that point, Microsoft released it in its download center. Here is a link. It's a bit.ly link, so it is case sensitive, but you can download InfoPath 2013 for free. If you think you had it and you don't anymore, the Office 2016 preview actually removed InfoPath 2013 from a lot of computers. So download it again. If you never had it, this is a great time to do it. It's a free product. One more thought. There is no InfoPath 2016, and there won't be an InfoPath next and next and next, but this version will be supported until April of 2023. Even though Microsoft is looking for other form tools for use in SharePoint, this is still the form tool we have, the best tool we have now, a free tool. Even though there will be no new versions of InfoPath, you should still feel comfortable using this as a tool. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of InfoPath form templates in existence. And all of the InfoPath templates that we have, all of the products that we create, and InfoPath as a tool will be supported until 2023. If you'd like to know more about InfoPath, you'll find a couple of courses in our training library. InfoPath 2013 Essential Training, the version I just showed you, and also SharePoint 2013 Customizing List Forms. Even though it's not the current version of SharePoint, the process is exactly the same because InfoPath hasn't changed.